So, my talk's about why you should stop looking for a fix for imposter syndrome. So, I'm going to start off with some bad news. So, the reason for this is that there is no fix. And I know this because I've spent hours and hours and hours trawling through the internet trying to find one. However, I do have some good news because I found some ways that have helped me that I'm hoping I can share with you. So first of all, I just wanted to touch on what imposter syndrome is. So it kind of encompasses in everything on the right. It's a feeling of being a fraud. It might be that you feel like you got to where you are through luck. It could be that voice in your head, as Louise has just said, that you're going to get found out. And the bottom one, so you might think that you're not good enough, but in there I've put in brackets incorrectly, because 99.9% of the time that thinking is wrong and you're exactly where you should be. We estimate that about 70% of people have felt like this at some point in their lives, but really we believe this to be higher. And the reason for that is because some people might not want to admit it, but also some people don't recognise that what they've been feeling is imposter syndrome until you start talking about it. So for me, imposter syndrome is something that I've felt and suffered, because I claim to suffer from it because I hate it. It's something with for years. And as recent as Friday, I was sat crying at my dining table whilst I was trying to write this talk, having a massive breakdown because I was like, I'm not a speaker. They're going to find out, who am I to talk about this? But what I want to talk about today is where in the past 18 months it's become more of an issue and come more to a head. So just before lockdown last year, I changed careers and I moved into tech. I'd done 12 months of mentoring and I went into the interview, and at that point, failing that interview was not an option for me. I did loads of work and I was going to get the job. There was no possibility. So I went in the interview and I remember sitting there and you had to do a task. And as a result of doing the 12 months of mentoring, and I'd kind of made a nuisance of myself in the department to network and learn as much as I could. I was really keen on telling the interviewers that I'd completed the task by myself. And that was something that was really important to me. Anyway, I did get the job, so I'm really happy that I'm now a BA. But that's kind of where my issues started. So as I got the job, I got really positive feedback. The one thing that would play on my mind for probably the next 6-9 months was the fact that I didn't start at a junior level. I went in kind of at a professional level, and I just didn't understand how, yes, I'd done the mentoring, but I'd never done the work before. I'd never been a BA. I'd never worked in tech. I never had anything around the job title. So how could they say that I can do the job and I wasn't a junior? In addition to that, I went onto a team that I already knew the domain. So this again was a bit strange for me. So on the Friday, I would have been the person kind of telling the other BAs what the problems were and what issues we need to consider. And then I was coming back in on the Monday, and I was now supposed to go and find them problems and speak to other people when I knew kind of all the answers myself. So yeah, I was a little bit lost. As well as on this, we were then getting results. So we was doing everything that we needed to do as a team, but I just couldn't help convincing myself that if I was on another team, then we wouldn't be doing as well, and it was just luck for where I was. Following on from this, I remember getting a piece of feedback and being told, Katie White, you just get it. You just get it. And I was like, this isn't right. I've fooled them. They must be wrong. How can I get it when apparently other people that have been doing it for longer or had more experience didn't get it? And them thoughts of is wrong, it just they really got to me a little bit. And it weren't just the thoughts that would affect me. So most weeks within the first 6 months, I'd be crying. I'd make workshops and meetings into a big deal. This is probably where lockdown maybe worked in my favour because it meant I could just turn my camera off and mute myself. But I'd constantly be ringing managers for reassurance, be full of self-doubt. And looking back, I think subconsciously I was trying to prove my managers wrong and tell them that I should be at a junior level. But it really like manifested in every area of my work. I remember going to a talk about imposter syndrome, and I really thought that talk was going to give me all the answers. And I remember being a bit disappointed because the one key takeaway was treat imposter syndrome as a positive because it means you're outside your comfort zone. Now, while that's valid, at that time, that's not what I wanted. I wanted someone to come and take away them feelings and not tell me that if I wanted to be successful and ambitious, I had to feel like this. So this is kind of where then my incessant Googling started. So I was convinced that out there somewhere, there was a cure for imposter syndrome and it was just hidden in like a deep hole on the internet. And it was just waiting to be uncovered. And so I was going to be the person that would go and find it and then share it with the world and basically save everyone. And one of the things that always comes up is around acknowledgement. And again, this is something that I think can help. So it's this acknowledgement of your feelings and what it is and being able to put a name to it. Where I already knew about imposter syndrome from being told about it a few years ago. I knew that what I was suffering from, what I was feeling was imposter syndrome, but I wanted more than just being able to put the label on. I was very much at a point of, right, that's what it is. How do I deal with it? And so I wanted to share some of the things that I then found that have helped me, because upon reflecting around this and talking about imposter syndrome with a few other people and doing it as part of the Confidence Collective, this is where I found that it can get easier and it doesn't necessarily go away. And the reason it probably doesn't go away is because the person in the talk who was saying it's about your comfort, being outside your comfort zone, was right in what they were saying. One of the things that I tried at the time was put in screenshots like this. I'd search on Pinterest to find motivational quotes and put them as my backdrop on my phone. This is one that I thought was really nice at the time. So you're busy doubting yourself while so many people are intimidated by your potential. Other ways that I feel like tangible ways that have helped to reduce my imposter syndrome are keeping a log of positive feedback. So we often hear about put your positive feedback in a file on your emails. And I've done that in the past, but what I always found was that it would go in there and I might dig through it when it was appraisal time. This time I created a PDP, so a personal development board on Trello, and I've bookmarked that. So every day when I go into Trello to use like the team Kanban boards, etc., it's my personal development board that I see. And when I open that up, it's that long list of positive feedback that I see. So even without having to read what people have said over the year, that's built up, and every day I've got that visual cue of, well, people are saying I must be doing okay, so they can't all be wrong. I started doing mini retros on myself. So at the beginning I did these every week, but as with everything, they kind of slip. Sometimes it can go a month without doing them. But I'll just take that 5-10 minutes once a week or a couple of times a week or a month, whenever it is, to reflect back on what's gone well and what's not gone well. And again, I do this on that Trello board. And what I've noticed recently is that my what's going well column is getting a lot longer than my what's not going well. And it's also really nice to look back at like this time last year and some of the things that I was putting that haven't gone well and how much I've grown since, and remember how far I've gone because I don't feel that rubbish anymore. Another big one for me was around validation. So going back to the point of how can I do this job when I've never done it before? I'm someone that needs like that piece of paper to say, you've done it, now go out and do it. And doing the Scrum Master qualification in September really did that. So I went along, and someone that was qualified because they had the name was telling me things that I already knew. But then at the end of it, I've got that certificate to say, yeah, you're a qualified Scrum Master. And it was someone else kind of validating what I knew was right. Changing up your environment. So this around for me is that when I changed teams, my imposter syndrome reduced quite a lot. And I think being in the domain that I was at the beginning, I was probably a little bit too much in my comfort zone, which I know is a bit contradictory, but I was a bit too comfortable, and I don't think I realised how much I knew. And when I changed teams, completely new, different area of the business, know nothing, but it was able for me to put into practice what I knew, and it was a bit like, oh, actually, I have learned stuff, and I do know my stuff, and I'm making valuable change. And the last one was just revisiting the research. So this probably links into that acknowledgement piece of knowing more about it. So there was a really nice blog that I don't know if anyone else follows him. It's called The Samurai Business Analyst. He sent one out today around knowledge is kind of like power, and it all links back into that. The more you know about something, the less it is to be like scared of or anxious of. And for me, like going back into it and looking at the different types of imposter syndrome, there's one that's called the natural genius, which sounds a bit funny when you're talking about imposter syndrome, because your first initial thought is, well, I'm not a genius. But when I was looking at that now applies to me, I think, when I was getting told you just get it, because I couldn't understand how I could just get it and other people didn't. And I think it's just that understanding of how different things play out a little bit. So hopefully I've like prevented anyone from going into that internet black hole like I did, and giving you some tangible ways that might make them feelings a little bit more comfortable. I have also written like a little blog post around this, because when I started doing, did anyone share then?
No.
Okay. Like I clicked something and you all disappeared. Because when I started writing my talk on Friday, it kind of just grew and grew. So I'll post that in the chat because it just goes into it in a little bit more detail. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, your claps are coming through. You can do the claps on the reactions. If not, you're not used to Zoom, you've got reaction button on the menu bar, and you can do virtual claps. Yes, they're all coming through now, Katie. Brilliant. If you yeah, you're welcome, Jason. Brilliant. Thank you. That was amazing. And definitely you did different to what you've heard before in terms of actually sharing that practical advice. And again, really just relevant resources, tips, feedback, which you can actually put into practice.